All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Mixed Martial Arts. As usual, my name is Austin Shaper, and this is a podcast where we explore the topics of UAP, the UFC, and World War III. Today being a UFC episode, and man, it has been a little while since I've posted an episode, probably about almost 2.5 weeks. So it has been quite some time, but I wanted to get back into it, get back on the horse. I've just been busy with life, and sometimes doing a podcast ends up on the back burner, you could say. But I'm very excited to be doing a UFC episode because we have to talk about what happened last night with UFC 295. Hopefully, you guys watched it. But if you didn't, I'll give you a very brief update, I guess, on what happened. I'm not going to go over the whole card. I actually really just want to talk about the main and the co-main because they were so exciting, and there's just so much to discuss with both of those fights. There was a finish, specifically a knockout on every single fight of the main card. So normally I get back home, like if I go out and watch the fight with my friends, I get home maybe like between 1 and 1:45 at night. I was back home in bed at 12:30. That's how fast this card was. I love that. That's like the best thing for me because, it throws off your whole schedule. If you live here close to the East Coast, I'm in Ohio, but if you're in the Eastern time zone, you don't get done with these fights until like 1, 2 in the morning, and it can really throw off your entire day. So it was nice to get through a quick card and an exciting card. Man, it was so good. We went and watched it at B-Dubs with some buddies, and man, let's just dive into, I guess let's start with, where do we go with it, the co-main or the main event? Let's start with the co-main with Tom Aspinall and Sergey Pavlovich fighting for the interim heavyweight fight. Now, you guys probably know that this fight came to pass because of Jon Jones' injury. Jon and Stipe were supposed to be fighting last night at MSG. It's not how it panned out. You guys know Jon Jones tore his pectoral muscle. He's going to be out for quite some time. I think the doctors estimated like at least 8 months. And then you got to think about it after that 8 months. Imagine if you didn't work out for 8 months and then you have to try to get back in fight shape. So you'd have to go through probably like some sort of normal, like a pre-fight camp and then an entire fight camp. So I would be very surprised if we see Jon Jones back before, this time next year. I would say probably November of next year seems like a realistic time frame. But where it gets very weird, as we all know, anybody who follows this closely, it's a very odd situation because Stipe, they did not offer supposedly the title fight, the interim title fight to Stipe. They ended up pulling Stipe from the card. He was there in attendance last night, but he was not fighting, and instead they gave this interim title opportunity to Aspinall and Pavlovich. I thought it was an amazing fight to put together. Thought it was the two right guys at the top of the division, and I just think it set up a very weird situation with what's going to happen as far as Jon has the belt. They didn't ask him to relinquish the belt. So he's still quote unquote the champion, but he's going to be out for minimum, roughly a year, we can estimate. And then yet they're still saying that Stipe is the number one contender, but they don't even offer Stipe the interim title fight. And then let's say Jon comes back in November of next year. So you're having the interim champ, which we'll dive into who that is, being Tom Aspinall, waiting on ice for a year now after, an incredible performance where he didn't get injured at all, wants to probably stay consistent and get a fight booked, and they were going to put him on ice for an entire year, and then have Stipe, who's going to be coming off of, at that point, a 2.5 year layoff. It's got to be a little under 2.5 years if him and Jon end up fighting, and he's coming off of that vicious KO loss to Francis. So yeah, I just don't understand the dynamic. I don't understand what the UFC is thinking on that one. It definitely is a legacy fight that I thought should happen. But then after the injury, I kind of feel like, as in terms of Jon's legacy, I think that him facing the winner of Pavlovich or Aspinall would actually make more sense as far as his legacy, because that's like the next generation, especially Tom Aspinall. It's the next up-and-coming generation of the heavyweight division. So for Jon retiring, I initially didn't feel this way. I thought, I was very excited about the Stipe fight, but now I just feel like Stipe coming off of a long layoff and a terrible loss, and him being, I think, 42 years old. So he's only getting older by the minute. He's not getting better. He's going to be getting worse. That's just the way the human body works at this age. And, perhaps at a best case scenario, he could maintain where he's at now for the next year as far as like his physical shape, his fight IQ, so on and so forth. But then, getting back into it with the greatest of all time. But then obviously you have to admit John Jones would be coming off of a long layoff as well. And, John, when he did face Cyril Gahn for the belt, he was only in the cage for a minute and a half. So quite a odd predicament that we're in. And, let's just dive into the co-main event with Tom Aspinall. You guys know at this point, Tom Aspinall is now the interim heavyweight champion. He knocked out Sergey in the first round. I think it was like a minute and a half, minute 40 something into the first round. What on earth, dude? I mean, for one, Michael Bisping, if you guys follow his podcast or his YouTube channel, he predicted this like down to a T. He kept saying that not only was Tom Aspinall going to win and become the interim champion, but that he was going to make it look easy. I went back and forth over and over in my head about who is going to win this fight. I mean, Tom Aspinall is amazing. He's at heavyweight, but he moves like a middleweight. He bounced back from that horrible leg injury fighting Curtis Blades. He came back, fought Marcin Tybura, and knocked him out in the first, I believe. So we just didn't get to see much of him in that return fight. So it's like, in my mind, I was sitting there thinking okay, it definitely seemed that he was back physically in that last fight, but we just don't know. And facing somebody who, Pavlovich, who's on a 6-fight knockout streak in the first round. So I favored Sergey going into the fight. I definitely could see a world where Aspinall pulled it off, but I didn't think it was going to be this. I thought, the common opinion I heard and talking to my friends as well was okay, maybe Tom Aspinall, his path to victory potentially could be surviving the first round and then wearing Pavlovich down, who hasn't seen past the first round in quite a number of years at this point. So maybe he doesn't have that cardio base, and perhaps Aspinall can survive for the first round or two, wear down Pavlovich, and then maybe submit him or something. That's kind of what we were hearing, or maybe even takes him to a decision. But at least myself, I can only speak for myself. I did not see any world where Aspinall just I mean, I don't discredit his skills at all. So anything is possible in the octagon. I always say that, but I didn't see it as probable that Aspinall would finish Sergey, certainly by knockout in the first round. But that's what happened, man. I mean, he finished him. It was exactly as Michael Bisping said. He was too quick. He countered Sergey on the feet, went in for a very, very quick 1-2. I had to rewatch it 5 times. I'm like, man, how is he moving so fast? This big-ass dude closed the distance rapidly. And, finished Sergey on the ground. Ref called it. That's all she wrote. He was obviously very emotional. How could you not be? And then we found out in the post-fight that Aspinall, apparently, after he got the call, you guys got to keep in mind, he was coming off of no training camp, essentially. This was 2 weeks. 2-week notice, same as Michael Bisping. Some weird comparisons and similarities between Michael Bisping's path to the belt and Tom Aspinall. So he had essentially no training camp, 2-week notice that he was going to be fighting Pavlovich. While Pavlovich, and I didn't mention this in my last episode because I wasn't aware of it, Sergey was the backup for John Jones and Stipe. So, and now we learn, apparently he was essentially just the backup if Stipe got pulled because, John obviously didn't fight, and they didn't give it to Stipe. So Sergey, my point being, in a roundabout way, is what I'm trying to say is Sergey was in a training camp, and he was ready to make weight, and, he was ready for a potential fight, whereas Tom was coming straight up off the couch. And we heard in the post-fight presser, to get to my point, Tom Aspinall pulled his back out. I think he said 3 or 4 days. I think he said 3 days into him knowing that this fight was going to be taking place. So pulls his back out, says he could barely move a muscle, and it made him very scared, very worried, and that he was extremely nervous in the back before the fight. And I'm sure that has to play into him. If you guys have ever hurt your back pain is one of the worst things. It's extremely, not only is it extremely painful, but it's very debilitating. Just one little nerve goes askew in your back, and you are all of a sudden you could be prime shape in your 20s, 30s, and you feel like you're a 90-year-old man, can't bend over, can't get off the couch. And he had that 2 weeks going into a title fight against a man who knocked 6 dudes out in the first round, the biggest fight of his life, and he stepped up to the plate and just smashed a home run. So absolutely phenomenal. Now, what's going to happen with him next? Are they going to end up having Jones relinquish the belt and just end up making Aspinall the undisputed champion? Is John going to end up coming back in late next year and facing Stipe and having Aspinall on ice? I don't see how that's possible. I would imagine the UFC is going to have to change course on this, especially since the fight ended in the first minute and a half of the first round. Aspinall took no damage. He needs no rest at all. And I'm sure he wants to become the, undisputed champion. So there's very, very uncharted territories. I don't know where we go from here. And as I mentioned, I originally thought that this fight was worth waiting for with Stipe, but if you guys were watching Stipe's walk-in to the arena, dude looked like he was 78 years old. He was walking with like a major limp, had like glasses on and a grandpa coat. It just doesn't, I love Stipe. I think he, you have to call him the greatest heavyweight of all time, but I just think his time has passed. I think he's old. I think he's 41, 42 years old. He came off of a vicious loss, and he sat out for a long time to get this John Jones fight. And then, nothing, it's not his fault that John had to pull out, but such is life. And I just can't imagine him. Let's say they even did make him wait for a year and they give him this title fight with John Jones. I mean, do you think Stipe is going to be in the prime shape of his life to be able to fight the greatest of all time? I don't think so, man. I think that ship has sailed. And if you keep him on ice another year, I just see Stipe losing that fight. Truthfully, I could be wrong. Anything can happen in the cage, but you'd have to favor John Jones, I would imagine, pretty heavily. The counterpoint to that being, obviously, John Jones is also coming off of a long layover, and he's coming off of a terrible, pectoral injury. So it's just a weird dynamic. Are they going to make them fight, keep Aspinall on ice? I just don't see a world where that happens. Could they potentially boot Stipe out and give Aspinall the chance to fight John Jones? I don't think John Jones wants that fight. I don't think he sees anything exciting enough, essentially as a legacy fight, I guess you could say. I would disagree personally, just because I think Tom Aspinall is clearly the new breed. I mean, he is a step up from everybody else in the division, and I'm very excited to see that potential fight, John Jones and Tom Aspinall. I think Tom could probably beat John Jones, and I think if there was ever a time to beat John Jones, it would be right now, where Aspinall is riding this, high, and John is kind of riding this low, where he's coming off of a long layoff, terrible injury, and he knows that this is his last fight. So the fire is going down for the competitive spirit, potentially just the physical injuries, the age, and Tom Aspinall is like prime right now. So I definitely think that Tom Aspinall could pull it off. I just don't think John is probably going to give him that opportunity. He probably sees Stipe as a much more winnable fight, which truthfully from his perspective would be a fair assessment. So I just don't know where we go from here. I'm interested to hear your guys' opinion on this. Do they give Stipe the chance to fight Aspinall in the interim and fight for the interim belt and make Stipe kind of defend? I think that's kind of fair. I mean, Stipe's coming, yes, he is a legend and he is considered the greatest heavyweight of all time, but that credential can only get you so far, and he's coming off of this, like I said, terrible KO loss to Francis, and then sat on his ass for a long, long time to get this John Jones fight. Now the John Jones fight gets pulled. I would imagine it makes sense that Stipe, hey, you still want that opportunity? Well, we can't just hold up the entire division for your little dream. You're going to have to fight Tom Aspinall. You're going to have to win that interim belt to continue to wait for John Jones. I think that's fair. I mean, Stipe theoretically should be in fight shape right now. I mean, he didn't look like it. If you watch that video of him walking in, he looked like he was 98 years old on the way to the retirement home. But, we have to assume he was in fight shape because he was supposed to be literally fighting last night. So he should be in fight shape. Tom Aspinall's not injured. So I'm not saying it's fair. I'm a huge Stipe fan. I don't think it's ideal for Stipe. I don't think it's necessarily quote-unquote right. But because of these very unique circumstances, I would say Stipe, if he wants this opportunity, he does not have the ability to hold up the division, for a year. I think he's got to fight Tom Aspinall and And that's weird. We've never seen an interim champion have to defend their interim belt. Very unprecedented times. And, we just don't know where it goes from here. We'll have to see what Dana says, but I'm sure he got asked about it a bunch in the post-fight interviews that he does. So we'll see what Dana has to say about it. I haven't gone to watch it yet. I'll let you guys know if there's any update in that department. But let's just wait and see, I guess. It's very uncharted territory. I would like to see Stipe fight Tom Aspinall in the meantime if he wants that fight with John Jones. And let's just see, is Tom going to fight John? Is John going to fight Stipe? And then they both retire and, Tom Aspinall just inherits the undisputed title? I don't think so. I don't think Tom Aspinall is going to want to wait for a year to be able to become the undisputed champ. So let's just wait and see. Now, moving on to the main event of the evening, a very rare circumstance where the heavyweights are the co-main and the light heavyweights are the main event. You had Alex Pereira facing Yuri Prochazka for the championship because Jamal Hill is injured. My goodness, so many injuries in light heavyweight and heavyweight. There's just always something that's making these divisions a mess, is there not? And it always seems to revolve around John Jones in some sense, but... So Jamal's out. He was there watching and was an ACL injury, something like that, from playing basketball, and he's going to be out for quite some time. I don't think quite a year, but wouldn't surprise me if it's 7-8 months from now that we see him in a title fight. Who did you guys have favored going into this? Because I kept going back and forth. As the fight was about to start, I said Yuri Prochazka, but you just can't discount Pereira's left hook. It just comes in handy all the time, and that's exactly what happened in this fight. I thought that Prochazka, I don't know about the first round. I have to go back and rewatch it. I was with a bunch of buddies, so you guys know how it is when you're talking with your friends and you're at a bar or a restaurant. It's kind of hard to be able to score it in real time, but I did think for certain in the second round that Prochazka was pulling away. It seemed to me that he had Pereira kind of on the fritz there for a minute. It actually looked to me as if Alex Powhatan was looking like Izzy was looking in their first fight when Izzy was about to go out and then the ref called it. He was backing up a lot, kind of leaning back against the cage or at least towards the cage. And, Prochazka was landing some heavy, heavy shots. And Pereira just looked a step behind. I think the first round ended with Powhatan on his back. And he kind of looked a little lost. He's still, quote unquote, you can say an amateur in mixed martial arts. I was about to say mixed martial arts, but in mixed martial arts, due to the fact of just lack of experience, this is his 7th fight, I believe, in the UFC, 7th fight. I mean, this dude's resume is just, you got to put this dude on the Mount Rushmore of greats in the mixed martial arts, and he, 7 fights in. You guys look at this. He literally has beat, if you guys don't know the result, I'll break some news for you. He knocks out Yuri Prochazka in the second round. He lands this nasty counter left hook, drops Prochazka. Prochazka tries to get back to his feet, but doesn't quite get to his feet. And they're in this sort of clinch where Prochazka is trying to get up. And Powhatan is dropping elbow after elbow after elbow. Now, there was a lot of people complaining initially about the stoppage. We were going back and forth in my group talking like, was that an early stoppage? Was it fair? To me, it seemed in real time that it was a little early, but going back and watching the replay, it seemed to me that as those elbows were raining down, not only was Yuri not even defending them, definitely not intelligently defending them, but he went limp. He went completely limp, but then when he fell back to the ground, to the mat, he appeared to wake back up. And then, ref calls it, and then he rolls back over and stands up. So it was one of those weird circumstances where it's like either the ref should have called it a tad earlier. I know it sounds weird to say because people were saying early stoppage, but I think the ref should have called it like a second earlier as he was still in that weird position, getting the elbows rained down on him where he hadn't fallen back yet. Looked to me like he was 100% out. But then he let it play out. Or you should have just not called it and let it play out a little bit longer and see what would have happened as Yuri got to his feet. Initially, a lot of people felt early stoppage. That's what the word was on Twitter. But, not so fast. We have to throw that and dismiss that out the window because Yuri Prochazka himself said he was out. He said it was a fair stoppage because I was unconscious, and then he woke back up, essentially, which is very weird because that's exactly what happened. Prochazka has told us that's exactly what happened when he fought Dominic Reyes a few years back. He got knocked out, I think, by a head kick or something, and then he woke back up and went into side control, something like that, and he said after the fight, yeah, I got knocked out, but I woke back up and continued the fight. And then you guys know he ended up beating Dominic Reyes. So clearly, if there's any takeaway from this, it is that Yuri Prochazka, down to his core, down to his literal subconscious, is a true fighter's fighter, and that there is nothing in that man's soul that wants to get out of a fight. Even if he's injured, even if he's almost out of it, his body is going to continue to fight. And if you turn him off, you better really turn him off, because he is going to wake back up and continue fighting as if nothing happened. And it looked like that was what was going to happen. But, no conspiracy here. We can't say early stoppage because the man himself said good stoppage. I was knocked out, So what can you say? Poatan wins and becomes double champion now in 7 fights. He's beat 4 champions. Let's count them up. Sean Strickland, he finishes Sean, who is now obviously the current middleweight champion. He beats Israel Adesanya, finishes him, who was the former middleweight champion. He beats Jan Blachowicz at 205, the former light heavyweight champion. Sorry, I can't speak early in the morning. And then now he beats Yuri Prochazka, the former light heavyweight champion. In 7 fights, this dude has beat 4 champions. What on earth is wrong? They need to do a case study on this man. And what's even funnier to me is he didn't say a word about Jamal Hill after the fight, who was right there in the audience. What did he take his 15 minutes of fame to talk about? None other than Stylebender, Israel Adesanya. He comes out and says, "Come to daddy" on the mic, which I thought was just so funny. And he wants Israel Adesanya to come up to 205 and fight him for a chance at becoming double champ. That is a beautiful... you couldn't write a better script than the rivalry between these two men, and I just don't know what possesses... Poatan is the dream stealer, dude. It's crazy because let's rewind. Stylebender went up, if you guys remember, to light heavyweight to attempt to become double champion by fighting Jan Blachowicz when Blachowicz was champ. Blachowicz crushed that dream, and then Poatan, out of spite, comes to the UFC, makes it to the top, beats Stylebender, gets the belt from him, steals the man's belt, gives the man an opportunity for revenge. Israel Adesanya gets his revenge, but not so fast. Then Poatan goes up to 205, beats the man that Stylebender lost to, and then on top of that goes and beats Yuri Prochazka and essentially does what Stylebender wanted to do. So he steals the man's dream and then puts it right in front of his face, flaunts it in front of his face and says, "Hey, come try to do what I just did. What you couldn't do, come try to do it by fighting me in their UFC trilogy." Now, you guys know they fought in kickboxing many times. I don't even remember how many fights this would be if they fight again. I think 5 maybe. But this will be the UFC trilogy, which I really was excited to see. This was exactly what I wanted in my little UFC drama. I wanted it to play out like this. I wanted Poatan to become champion. Although I'm a huge Yuri Prochazka fan, I wanted it to go this way so that we could see the trilogy end with Stylebender up at 205 fighting Poatan. Who do you favor in that fight? I think you have to favor Poatan because Stylebender is a little outsized by him, and by moving up in weight, obviously Poatan doesn't have to cut that weight, which could have factored into his knockout loss to Stylebender. You just don't know, but very fascinating matchup. And like I said, a case study needs to be done on this man. This man has more spite and vengeance in him than anybody I have ever witnessed in my entire life. It's like it fuels his career. Anything that Stylebender wants to do, Poatan says, "Hold up, I can do it better." It's very crazy, and he brings the belt home to Glover Teixeira, who lost to Yuri Prochazka in their title fight. So just the UFC drama. You could not write a better script. Like I said, this to me is like further proof that we live in some sort of a simulation, and that the alien overlords or whatever are like orchestrating these dramatic events that happen in the world, because this is just it's too weird. It's too weird to even be real, the story of what's going on with Poatan in this sport. And, his career has just, I'm being a little facetious. I'm kidding, guys. I don't necessarily believe that, but I'm just saying the drama is so fucking crazy. You couldn't write. If you turn this into a movie or a television show, people would be like, "What? That's not realistic. He does all these crazy things. He's only 7 fights in. He's essentially an amateur. How could he become double champion?" And yet we are living in that reality today. So he didn't care one bit about Jamal Hill. Obviously, for this Stylebender fight to happen, we're going to have to get Jamal Hill and Poatan fighting, and Poatan's going to have to get past him and defend the belt to then be able to fight Stylebender. I don't think there's a world where, unless Jamal Hill was out from his injury for a very prolonged amount of time and it's taking longer than we anticipate, perhaps they could throw it to Stylebender, but I don't think they're going to try to mess up the division like that. I would imagine, and it's interesting because Izzy has said he doesn't want to fight for quite a long time. The counterpoint to that would be he's got to be sitting there saying, shit, the guy I just knocked out now has the belt that I wanted. Maybe that's the motivation that he needs to get back into the octagon sooner rather than later. It makes sense, doesn't it? A fight that he even said the next fight he wants, he just wants it to be exciting, wants it to be fun. Now, him facing Poatan normally under normal circumstances without a new belt on the line, I don't think Izzy would find that very, enticing. Now, fighting him at 205 and the chance to become double champ, there's no way Izzy's not waking up today and mulling that over in his mind. There's no way he's not considering going up to fight, Poatan for that bout. I mean, he knocked him out. In Izzy's mind, he's got to be sitting there saying, okay, the dude I just finished now has the belt that I failed to go and get. Maybe I can close this chapter, not only in the rivalry with Poatan, but with my effort to become a double champion. He can cement himself as one of the greats, which he already has done, but even more so if he were to become double champ. So the drama continues. Where do we go from here? God only knows. I do think Jamal Hill, you got to give him the fight. That's fair. What's fair is fair. You got to give Jamal the fight. But should Poatan get past Jamal, and who would you favor in that? We'll have to discuss that at a later time. Off the top of my dome, it's kind of hard to discount Poatan, though I did think Prohaska was putting it on Pieta pretty strongly in the second round. I thought that it looked close to being finished. I thought that if it continued down that path, I did not see Poatan surviving another round, but that's not how it played out. That left hook saves him again, and double champ. So what a great card, man. Like I said, first and second round finishes, knockout only on the main card. All, 5 fights, 6 fights, something like that. Amazing card. Gotta love the sport. How can you not love it? It's freaking amazing. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I apologize that it's been so long. I know I haven't done a geopolitical segment. I haven't done a UFO segment in quite some time. I'm going to get back into the groove of it. Just life happens, and sometimes it's hard to be able to jump on here and have the motivation to get on camera and babble a lot when you got so much stuff going on. But I am back, and I will attempt to pick up the momentum again and get back to consistent episodes. I appreciate you guys so much for being here, whether it's 12 of you or 1,000 of you. Doesn't really matter to me. I just enjoy talking about this stuff and talking with others who enjoy discussing these topics as well. Maybe you just like UFC, like our episode today, or perhaps you enjoy the UFO phenomenon, or you like discussing all the crazy geopolitical stuff happening in the world and how that could lead up to World War III. Regardless, I would encourage you to click subscribe and click the notification bell on YouTube. That is a quick, free, and easy way to support what I'm doing. It would mean the world to me. If you guys are listening to the podcast apps, the audio only, just click follow, leave me a 5-star review. That helps the algorithm pick it up and show it to people who have not come across mixed martial arts. That would be very helpful. And another way you guys could help and also be a part of the conversation with myself on a daily basis. I love doing the monologues, but I also like hearing other people's perspectives and just kind of interacting with people who also care about one of, two of, or all three of these subjects. If that's you, we got a Discord group called Mixed Martial Arts. You can find it in the description on the podcast platforms and also YouTube below me in the description section. Just click the link. It's a private Discord, but you should be able to join it freely. And we've got under 20 members, but people from all over the place, and we just kind of talk about the news and UFC drama, UFO stuff, our experiences, our interests, and the subjects. I got 3 little subgroups. So go ahead, follow that. Let's have a conversation. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'll be back in the next day or two with another episode. Peace out, fellow Martians. Thank you so much.